Hi everybody, this is R.ALFarhan from Aspen University. Today I will talk about research from different aspects. I will talk about the approvals a researcher should obtain and sampling size as well as other necessary things regarding the research plan. So please, listen and hopefully everything will be clear at the end of this presentation. Okay, let us start. First, what should a researcher consider before starting any type of study? What should he do after stating his or her research problem? I'm sure we all agree that conducting an accurate, valid and timely research into academic topics such as history, literature or anthropology is critical to succeed in the classroom and at work. In addition, writing the results into a paper is also a major step in the process. In the coming video, I will talk about basic considerations a researcher should take before starting any type of study.
Firstly, a researcher must decide on the type of organism to be used in his or her study. The organism that is best for testing the research problem should be used whenever possible, and it could be selected after the researcher determines the research problem and questions. While it might seem that the organism the study is being conducted on is the best choice for the study, that is not always the case. For example, investigating an issue related to humans, such as finding a cure for a disease, does not necessarily mean that the participants will be from the human organism. To avoid the risk, in fact, doing a study in non-human subjects, such as mice, is the best choice for investigators to avoid the risk that may happen to the human. Okay, as a researcher, let us assume that you have already determined the type of organism that is suitable for your study. The next question will be, where will you obtain your research subjects from? Researchers who want to use non-human subjects, such as mice, typically select one of three strains: the long Evans hooded, the Sprague Dawley albino, or the Worcester albino. Sex, age, and the supplier should also be decided by the researcher. If humans are selected as research participants, criteria of whom to include or exclude from the study should also be set by the researcher. Great! I have chosen the type of participants. The question now is, how many participants do I need? Just keep in mind, whenever the number of participants increase, the study accuracy and credibility increases. Furthermore, participant recruitment is a major challenge in many research studies involving human subjects. Recruitment involves a number of activities, including identifying eligible participants, adequately explaining the study to potential participants, and recruiting an adequate sample based on study goals and design. Now, in the following slides, I will explain the approvals that a researcher must obtain before starting any study. So let's go. As I explained in the previous video, participants could be of two different types, human and non-human subjects. Here, I will use animal as a non-human type. In non-human participants, if you are conducting a study that uses animals, you must receive approval from the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Moreover, if you are conducting a study that uses humans as research participants, you must receive approval from the Institutional Review Board. In either case, you must prepare a research protocol that details all aspects of the research, including the type of participants you propose to use and the procedures that will be employed in conducting the study. As you can see here, a sample of a research protocol. Just take a look and keep in your mind this protocol will be reviewed by committees I mentioned in the previous slide. In experimental or non-experimental studies, obtaining approval is one of the necessary steps. Without it, you may be unable to receive funding for future research projects. In case of animals, the committee will consider different conditions, such as avoiding or minimizing discomfort and ensuring pain is controlled. Also, the living conditions of the animals is considered, if it is appropriate for their species or not. Furthermore, medical care for the animals should be available. The primary concern of this committee is the welfare of human participants. The IRB will ensure that participants will provide informed consent. Let us emphasize on informed consent because it's a critical issue for participation in the research. According to that, they will make sure that the procedures will not harm the participants. If the method involves any potential harm, they have a particular and difficult decisions. Therefore, if this committee refuses to approve your research, you must either redesign it to overcome the objections, or you may supply extra information, or you may have to stop conducting your research totally. Now, I will talk about a type of study that may be used to avoid risk in an experiment: the pilot study. Christensen, Johnson, and Turner defined the pilot study as an experiment that is conducted on a few participants prior to the actual collection of data. In the coming slides, I will explain the benefits of conducting such type of study. Now, you are preparing to conduct a large research study. To ensure all your ducks are in a row, you may first want to carry out a pilot study. Why? For many reasons. Some of them are to test the research process and protocol, and also identify variables of interest and decide on how to operationalize each one of them. Moreover, you can use its result to test methodological changes to implementation or administration of an instrument. Also, you may want to conduct a pilot study to develop or test the efficiency of research instruments and protocols. Furthermore, the researcher may want to estimate statistical parameters for later analysis. Next, I will talk about how many participants are needed to test hypotheses adequately, how to determine the size of the sample, and balance other aspects. How many participants do I really need? This simple question is a never-ending quandary for researchers. A larger sample can yield more accurate results, but from other factors it can be pricey. Sample size may vary from 2 to infinity. So, how large should your sample be? Well, this depends largely on how accurate you want your research data to be. In other words, how closely you want your results to match those of the entire population. Additionally, your sample size should be large enough to get insights in most or all of the perceptions that are important for your research. The size of your sample depends on the research project and the method you are using. The sample size is chosen to maximize the chance of uncovering a particular mean difference and the correlation between variables, which is also statistically significant. The reason larger samples will increase your chance of significance is that they more reliably reflect the population mean. This guides us to say that whenever sample size increases, the statistical power of research data will increase. Power of statistics, actually the power or sensitivity of a binary hypothesis test, is the probability that the test correctly rejects the null hypothesis. Okay, what's the null hypothesis? It means the hypothesis that there is no significant difference between specified populations, any observed difference being due to sampling or experimental error. Now, you have to know that whenever we conduct a hypothesis test, we'd like to make sure that it is a test of high quality. One way of quantifying the quality of a hypothesis test is to ensure that it is a powerful test.
Statistical power is a measure of the likelihood that a researcher will find statistical significance in a sample if the effect exists in the full population. Power is a function of 3 primary factors and 1 secondary factor: sample size, effect size, significance level, and the power of the statistic used. The sample size has a direct and substantial effect on statistical power. It is clear that when the sample size is large, the power becomes high. Oppositely, the power becomes weak. The effect size, which is responsible about the magnitude of the relation between variables, can be measured as small, medium, and large. Typically, set by scientific convention, in the pilot study, researcher must use high significance level, which is called here P level, because of the small sample size. The most common reason to conduct a power analysis is to determine the sample size needed for a particular study. However, power analysis may also be used after a study has been completed to determine if the reason an effect was not significant was insufficient power.
As I argued before, determining sample size is a critical issue because samples that are too large may waste time, resources, and money, while samples that are too small may lead to inaccurate results. Therefore, the researcher must try to balance between all different factors before selecting the sample size. Now, I will explain how the independent variable conditions will be presented and how the dependent variable will be measured. To present the dependent variables and to measure the independent variables accurately, researchers must use the proper devices or instruments depending on the research subject. This means a specific type of apparatus must be used to arrive at a precise presentation of the independent variable and to measure the dependent variable. Microcomputers are used frequently in experimentation. The use of microcomputers in the laboratory gives the experimental an extremely flexible tool. It can be programmed to present as many different independent variables and record as many different types of responses as your creativity will allow. Thanks for listening and see you in another video.